The book of Ephesians speaks of a glorious church. To have such a glorious church, you must have a glorious past, present, and future. Let us reflect upon the collective histories of the Madison and Slaughter Road Churches of Christ. The first known settler in what was to become the city of Madison, Alabama, was John Cartwright, who came here in 1818. He came to the Tennessee Valley, part of the area then known as the Mississippi Territory, and he liked what he saw. He received a land grant from the federal government in a place that would first be called Madison Station, and then later in 1869, just Madison. Later, the Cartwright property would be sold to the Palmer family and be known as the Palmer Place. The history of Madison as a town actually began in 1856 when tracks were laid by the Memphis and Charleston Railroad Company. In 1858, a Judge Clemens was among the original landowners here. He planned the town lots fronting on the railroad, each which measured 66 by 198 feet. A depot was constructed on one of Clemens' lots, and a house was built for T.J. Clay, who was the first station agent. As more families moved into this fertile region, merchants were attracted and a business district founded on what was to become Main Street. The church in this area is pre-Civil War, even though the church here in Madison was not organized until 1879. Barton W. Stone, a restorationist, brought the message of Christians only from Tennessee into Alabama in 1841 near Huntsville. This movement proceeded in two directions, one down the Tennessee River to Lauderdale County, and the other settling in Madison County southward down the Huntsville Road. Even earlier, Raccoon John Smith, a pioneer restoration preacher, bought land in the Huntsville Hickory Flats for $1.25 an acre on November 2, 1814, and made a great impression in the area with the gospel. The results of their work and others led to an established church in Huntsville, 40 members in Athens in 1848, and 18 members of the church in 1860 in Triana. In 1879, T.B. Larimore, the founder and professor of Mars Hill Bible College, was requested by a Presbyterian lady to preach in the little town of Madison, Madison County, Alabama. Brothers Heron and Elam, two of his pupils, and his wife accompanied him to Madison. We had a few members there, but no effort had ever been made to establish a church, or had any of our brethren ever preached there. The meeting resulted in several additions, and steps were taken to build a meeting house. The building was completed in 1881, and the church began with a membership of 17. The church grew stronger as the years went by, and in a religious census in 1906, there were 443 members of the Church of Christ in Madison County. The church ceased to meet during the Depression years and became relatively inactive, and opened again during World War II. At this time, there was an average attendance of 50 members. A second building was erected in 1957 to meet the needs for classrooms and office space. By 1959, our numbers began to increase again. In 1968, a third building, which had a seating capacity of 350, was erected on the church's 4 acres. In 1972, there was a membership of 90, and in that year, elders and deacons were appointed. In 1979, Madison celebrated its centennial homecoming. That year, the average attendance was 187. There was a budget of $950 a week with an average contribution of $1,004. This was an increase of almost 100 members from 1972 to 1979. Slaughter Road Church of Christ had its beginning on September 12, 1965, when Christians in the area met at the home of J.B. Whitaker to worship God. There were approximately 45 in attendance for the first service. Prior to this date, many Christians in our community discussed the need for starting a new congregation. Meetings were held at various homes discussing plans to establish the congregation. A gospel meeting was conducted at Monrovia Junior High School to weigh the strength of the community to determine if there were sufficient interest to begin the congregation. A limited survey was made, and the conclusions drawn were sufficient evidence that a congregation was needed. Many members of the Lord's Church were not attending services anywhere, while others were driving great distances to worship God. J.B. Whitaker immediately offered his home as a temporary meeting place. A search was made for a part-time minister. Kyo R. Jin, a mathematics teacher at Madison Academy, accepted the position. A committee was selected to locate a lot for the new congregation. Charles Rodman soon ended the search as he donated 1 3/4 acres of land to the congregation. Other committees began to function even before the building plans were drawn up. The Shiloh Church of Christ offered their old building, with pews and heaters and fans, to our congregation for a total of $500. The men at the Slaughter Road Church of Christ immediately voted unanimously to accept the offer of the building, which would seat approximately 250 people. The first service was held in the building on December 1965. Some of the materials to rebuild the building were made by Bill Gentry, Don Martin, and Cheryl Thomas, who was in charge of rebuilding the old building. Brother J.C. Jones, an elder of the church at Central Church of Christ, and owner of the Jones Lumber Company, loaned the $3,000 necessary to move the building to its new location. The Central congregation agreed to pay the interest on the loan. We were able to receive assistance from our sister congregations. Mayfair Church sponsored the gospel meeting at the Monrovia Junior High School. Madison Lake Church and West Huntsville Church donated songbooks. In July 1967, Brother made the decision to build a $100,000 building, seating 450 people in the auditorium with 19 classrooms, including nursery. We were able to sell all the church bonds by the end of October 1967. The Christian Builders of Nashville, Tennessee were selected to build the new building. April 14, 1968 was another historic day for our congregation when we had our first worship service in the new building. Herman Todd, Charles Rodman, Don Martin, and J.B. Whitaker served on the new building committee with Herman Todd as the chairman. Other ministers that have served this Slaughter Road congregation are August Ruff, J.B. Whitaker, Randall Shadowan, and Paul Vining, who began in July of 1975. During these same years at the Madison congregation, Tom Phillips, Grady McKnight, Fred House, Paul Woods, and Gordon McWhirter were sharing the gospel. In February of 1987, an elder from both Slaughter Road and Madison arrived at Redstone Federal Credit Union on the same day to seek financial assistance to expand their growing needs. The financial burdens for each congregation would be great. A discussion took place that would prove to be a pivotal point in our collective history. It would require great faith and sacrifice, but these two men initiated the discussions that would bring together these two congregations into one united family. After deciding to go forward with the merger, we established a campaign to encourage the members to pledge $600,000 toward the buying of property and construction of a new facility. 10 acres of land was purchased on Hughes Road, and construction was started in September of 1987 and was completed in January of 1989. The banks said it couldn't be done. Some members were skeptical, but faith stepped in and assured the success of this merger. Members sacrificed of their time and money to preserve the financial security of this family of believers. Members could be seen chipping in to help out in a variety of ways. The resolve to make it work and the faith in God to see it through secured the Madison Church of Christ and its place in this growing community. January 15, 1989, the historic merging of two congregations became a reality. The total cost of the new facility was approximately $2.1 million. All the other properties of the Slaughter Road and Madison churches were eventually sold and applied to the mortgage. Though the church has been blessed with growth and prosperity since that day, it has not been without struggle along the way. In the early 1990s, a group of our members decided to split from our family and form another congregation. The pain that was felt in the absence of these members and the resolve to maintain our direction helped our church family to develop a greater love for each other and a deeper sense of unity. Since our historic merger, several men have served as our ministers. Randy Powell, Demar Elam, Bob Clarity, Randy Fowler, and Jim Stanley. Currently, as of the year 2005, Mike Winkler serves as our pulpit minister, Brandon Presnell serves as the youth and family minister, and Brother E.R. Brandon serves as our involvement minister. We are led by 7 godly shepherds: Jack Gross, Keith Hester, Tony Hoover, Larry Lawson, Gus McKinney, Ed Mobley, and John Walton. Through the years, God has continued to bless us with immense opportunities. In 2005, we have an average attendance of 779, with an average contribution of $24,597. God continues to pour His blessings on us as we seek to serve Him in greater ways. It has been mentioned that the book of Ephesians describes a glorious church. Let us hold fast to the words of the Lord through Paul the Apostle as we do our best to walk in a manner worthy of the calling with which we have been called, with all humility and gentleness, with patience, showing tolerance for one another in love, being diligent to preserve the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace.